The wind bit sharply against his face as he stood outside the small grocery store, clutching the last $20 bill he had left in the world. If only he knew that this single act of kindness, handing his final 20 to a stranger crying on the curb, would collide his fate with the one person he never expected to see again, the CEO who had fired him just 3 months ago. This was the moment that would test everything he still believed about kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength it takes to keep going when life keeps knocking you down. He was named Daniel Hayes, a single father whose life had been reduced to counting coins and carefully measuring hope. Ever since Emily, his 6-year-old daughter, had come into his world, she'd been the light guiding him through every dark corner. But lately, the shadows had grown longer. Losing his job as a warehouse supervisor at Hadley Enterprises had pushed him into a spiral of unpaid bills and sleepless nights. He replayed the memory often, standing nervously in front of the polished office desk while the CEO, Isabel Ray Hadley, slid a termination letter toward him with the same cold grace as if she were handing him a receipt. "Downsizing," she said. "Budget cuts," she added. But the only thing Daniel remembered was the way his stomach had dropped, as though someone had cut the wires holding him up. He didn't hate her. He didn't have the energy to. He simply missed the version of life where he didn't have to explain to Emily why Daddy sometimes cried in the bathroom. Today, after picking her up from school, he promised her he'd make spaghetti, her favorite. But when he opened his wallet, all he saw was this one crumpled bill, barely holding its shape, much like the man holding it. He stepped toward the store when he heard a soft sob near the curb. A woman sat on the ground, her hair messy, her breath shaky, mascara smeared across her cheeks. She looked lost, not in the physical sense, but in the way someone does when life hits them too fast, too suddenly. "Are you okay?" Daniel asked gently. The woman looked up, startled, clearly embarrassed. She muttered something about losing her purse, her phone being dead, being stranded with no way to get home. Daniel hesitated. His daughter needed dinner. His own fridge was nearly empty. But something inside him refused to walk past someone in pain. He held out the bill. "Here," he said. "It's not much, but it'll get you a ride home." The woman stared at it, then at him. I can't take that," she whispered. He smiled softly. "Someone once helped me when I needed it most. Today, I guess it's my turn." She finally accepted it, her hands trembling as she thanked him repeatedly. Daniel simply nodded, took Emily's hand, and walked inside the store with nothing but the hope that maybe they could improvise dinner with whatever change he had left in his pockets. This was the hook of Chapter 1, the moment Daniel gave away the last of what he had, unaware that fate was circling back, preparing to revisit him with the very woman who once controlled his life with a signature. Chapter 1 unfolded in the harsh glow of grocery store lights. Daniel rummaged through the aisles, calculating endlessly. He managed to buy a small pack of noodles with coins he scraped together. Emily didn't complain. She squeezed his hand and said, "It's okay, Daddy. We can share." That small voice always cut straight to his heart. On the walk home, he tried to hide how cold he felt, but Emily looped her arms around his and hummed softly, giving him warmth that money never could. Back at their small apartment, he made the simplest meal they'd ever had. They laughed, they talked, and despite everything, he felt grateful. But later that night, when Emily slept, he stared at overdue notices piled like a mountain ready to bury him. Meanwhile, the woman from the curb sat quietly in the back seat of a taxi, clutching the $20 bill like it was a lifeline. She kept replaying the stranger's kindness, the softness in his eyes. She wasn't used to people helping her without expecting something in return. Her world, one of wealth, meetings, skyscraper windows, and polished smiles, rarely offered sincerity. She arrived at her penthouse and slumped onto her couch, the day's chaos settling. Her name was Isabel Ray Hadley. The same CEO who had once fired a man she barely remembered, just another name in a folder. But tonight, something felt different. Something felt unsettling. She didn't know why that man's voice lingered in her mind. The next morning would bring the hook for Chapter 2, when she walked into her own company lobby and saw the same man again, this time mopping the floor because it was the only job he could find. Chapter 2 began with Daniel wearing a faded janitor's uniform, pushing a mop bucket down the gleaming marble hallway of Hadley Enterprises, a place he once walked proudly as a supervisor. Now he stood in the shadows, unnoticed. He tried to make himself invisible because the idea of former colleagues seeing him like this made his stomach twist. But he needed the money. Emily needed food, a warm home, a father who didn't break under pressure. Isabel stepped off the elevator, her heels sharp against the floor, her presence commanding as always, until she froze. Daniel looked up, and their eyes locked. Recognition slammed into her like a wave. She nearly dropped her bag. "You," she whispered. Daniel paused, unsure whether to greet her or pretend he hadn't seen her. She walked closer, her voice oddly shaky. "You're the man from yesterday." Daniel nodded. "Yeah. Small world, I guess." He tried to smile, but embarrassment tugged at his expression. Isabel swallowed hard, guilt creeping up her spine. "You gave me your last $20, she said as if trying to process it out loud. "Why? Why would you do that?" Daniel shrugged. "Because you needed it. It didn't matter who you were." Those words pierced deep. Isabel excused him for the day and went straight into her office, haunted by what she had seen. Guilt rooted itself in her chest. She pulled up Daniel's old file, seeing notes she had signed without truly reading them. Dependable worker, good record, single parent, dedicated. She leaned back in her chair, tears forming. She had fired a good man. And now he was cleaning her floors. No. This wasn't right. She went looking for him, found him eating a tiny sandwich outside the building, Emily sitting beside him swinging her legs happily. Isabel approached cautiously. Emily smiled at her. Daniel didn't. "Mr. Hayes," she began. "I owe you more than an apology." Daniel stiffened. "It's fine." "Really?" "No," Isabel insisted. "It's not. I made a decision that affected your entire life. I didn't know your story. I didn't even look. That's on me. And yesterday, you helped me without knowing who I was. Without hesitation." Daniel looked away, uncomfortable with praise. But Emily, blunt and honest, said, "Daddy helps everyone. Even when he's sad." That single sentence broke something inside Isabel. She knelt, eye level with the little girl. "You have a very good dad," she said softly. Emily nodded proudly. Isabel stood and made a decision that felt heavier than any corporate strategy she had ever signed. "Daniel, I want to offer your position back. But not only that, I want to promote you. Supervisor of Inventory Operations. Full benefits. Higher pay." Daniel blinked rapidly. "Why?" Isabel breathed in slowly. "Because you deserve it. And because sometimes, people who lose their way need someone to remind them how to be better." Daniel felt something warm crack open in his chest. Acceptance. Relief. Hope. He wasn't just getting a job back, he was reclaiming his dignity. Weeks later, Daniel stood in his restored role, shoulders straighter, steps lighter. Emily was enrolled in a better school. Their fridge was full. And Isabel, once the cold CEO, visited him often, offering genuine smiles and slowly discovering that kindness rebuilds people in ways power never could. She never forgot the day a man with nothing gave her everything she needed to find herself again. In the end, the story carried a simple message: one small act of kindness can turn strangers into lifelines, change the course of lives, and remind even the lost-hearted that hope often appears in the most unexpected places, even in the form of a single dad giving away his last $20.